Welcome to Ghoul Talk.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris A. I've probably already introduced myself in this video, but I am joined by my friend and creative collaborator, Jonathan.
Hello, everybody.
Jonathan is, first off, he is in my quarantine bubble, so no risks were, well, there's always risks, right? But no additional risks.
I drank a lot of bleach before I went here, so.
Yes. John is literally the only person not in my family that I've seen in a while. Jonathan is responsible for most of the music on my channel. Most of the music you hear is either me or him or some combination of the two of us. Or Quincy Jones. I did use a Quincy Jones song one time. So.
Ooh, which one?
Ironsides, I think it's called.
Oh.
So like. You know that one?
No, I don't.
So these days, and I think we're going to start seeing this more and more often, when someone introduces themselves, generally speaking, they'll give their pronouns. You'll see this in a lot of videos where they have a bunch of people. They'll just say, like, what's your name and what are your pronouns? Really, the only reason we do that is because so we don't assume. It used to be popular belief that everyone's either a man or a woman, and you can tell by looking. I mean, we've always used pronouns, just we didn't used to ask what people's pronouns were. So, Jonathan.
Yes.
What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he and him.
Cool.
What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are they, them. Technically, my pronouns are any, all, which is kind of a newer thing that I've seen where you just call me whatever. I don't really care. I do prefer they, them, but if you call me he, him, or even she, her, But for the sake of simplicity, I use they, them, because that's what I like. It makes me feel good in my heart and in my brain. So today, Jonathan wanted to have this conversation because Jonathan does not have his pronouns in bio.
I do not yet.
So we're going to talk about what that means, why we should do it, why everyone should do it, why people are mad about it, I guess. I don't know. So before we get into the questions, when I say bio, what I'm talking about is your biography. Just your little self-description in Twitter or Instagram, or I'm sure Parler has it now. Any social media generally has a bio where you just describe yourself. And so pronouns in bio just means on my public-facing social media, I put the pronouns that I use in there.
Again, like we said, I go by he, him. I feel relatively comfortable with that. I'm not someone who, I don't consider myself to be a particularly masculine person. I feel like, so even though I don't feel the need to necessarily go by they, them, I definitely understand where Chris and other people are coming from when they choose those types of pronouns. And I really first became accustomed to that idea of putting your pronouns in your bio this year. And my initial reaction was that, I felt like it made sense for they, them people, but I didn't quite understand it at first when it was somebody who was, in my mind, very evidently a man or very evidently a woman putting he, him, she, her in their bios. And at first it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I had that assumption of, very clearly, this person doesn't deviate from the norm, so why should they need to clarify that? So the reason why I'm here with you asking is, as someone who was born biologically male and has a penis as my genitive, I have a penis. Why exactly do you think I should put my pronouns in my bio, even if it is just he, him?
Yes. So I think there are two primary reasons that cisgender people, or most people, let's be frank, their gender expression and their gender identity are pretty much one-to-one. Most women present in a feminine way. Most men present in a masculine way. Not everyone. And so that's kind of the small reason that we would do it. Is it's just a way to communicate, hey, if you're going to talk about me, use these pronouns. Kind of the bigger reason is this is really something that was started by transgender and non-binary people. So it almost became this way of pointing yourself out, separating yourself from the crowd. And so, obviously with non-binary pronouns, it's pretty easy. Oh, this person is not, within the binary. But, a year ago, if someone put she, her in her bio, chances are that person was transgender, because it was a lot more common for transgender people to do this. So the idea is if we get to a point where most people do this, it no longer becomes a thing for just trans people to do. And that is important because transgender people face a lot of abuse online. So if you could go through and immediately tell someone is trans just because they put their pronouns in their bio, the internet is a more dangerous place for it. But if I can't tell if someone is trans just by looking at their pronouns, then it's safer for everyone, really, because, I know a lot of cisgender men who put he, him in their bio, a lot of cisgender women as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just a way to kind of signal this is how you refer to me.
I feel like, yeah, like I think broadly speaking, like the point you're trying to make is like, because we're getting to a point where this one-to-one relationship between sex and gender is sort of fading away, even if you do sort of exist in this realm that's sort of more commonplace, normalizing that differentiation between sex and gender, I think, is important, even if you are like me or just a person who would have been comfortable either way going through life, whether or not these social changes happened.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think that's a great way to put it. We're kind of normalizing the practice so that, it's just you are who you are. If you're a cisgender person, you should be comfortable claiming that. And if you're not, you should be comfortable claiming that. What's interesting is there's kind of this big pushback against, why should I tell you what my pronouns are? And what's interesting to me is pronouns are basically the first thing you ever learn about a person, maybe besides their name. And I mean this when you're meeting new people, and I mean this with babies. Like, that's the first thing we learn about a baby is what genitals do they have. And that helps inform how do we refer to them, maybe until they're old enough to kind of communicate their own gender identity. So I think, we've always done this. We've always done, as soon as you meet someone, you're able to, know what their pronouns are. The only thing that's changing is we are now understanding that it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's not much more complicated, just a little bit more. A piece of advice I would give is if you don't know someone's pronouns, just use they, them, because they, them is kind of a catch-all. It's gender neutral. I've never met anyone that is offended at being called they, them. Even if you know someone's gender, you can still use they, them pronouns. There's not really any reason not to.
Another one of the points/questions I have to ask is, I think particularly with maybe people who are older, where this stuff and this way of going about things is new, there is maybe a worry that by having more and more people be considered they, them, just like more and more people maybe that are, born male going by they, them, born female going by they, them, that it is an attack on the idea of masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting sort of thing. Like, you sent me something, I think, yesterday or the day before. Like, there was an implication that, like, someone was less of a man or less masculine by putting he, him pronouns in their bio. Yeah. And the thing that sort of we came to the consensus on is that, well, it's not really like an assault on masculinity, because if you are somebody who is masculine and like feels very comfortable with that sort of energy and that vibe, clarifying the fact that you also go by he, him pronouns in an era where less and less people are, I feel like that just reaffirms your own masculinity in a way that's still, at the end of the day, respectful towards other people. And I don't really feel like it's an assault on masculinity so much. It's just another way of going about things. The whole movement isn't actively going against the idea of masculinity or femininity. It's just allowing people to sort of express themselves however they want to, regardless of how society maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you are a manly man, you should have no problem insisting that your pronouns are he, him. Those are literally the most masculine pronouns we have. It's silly to say, like, identifying yourself as he, him makes you less of a man. That's just silly to me. So another thing I want to talk about is this idea of, like, degrading masculinity and femininity. That's just plain silly. Men used to wear dresses and wigs and makeup and all this stuff. And in Renaissance era Europe, it was very masculine to wear tights and flowy and florally stuff. The kind of socially defined ideas of masculinity and femininity are constantly changing. And really all they are is they're just like milestones or benchmarks to, like, I am 60% masculine. It doesn't matter. With this idea of, like, shifting masculinity and femininity, think about someone like Prince, who maybe today would tell us that he's non-binary, but assuming that he was able to fully express himself in his lifetime, let's just stick with he, him. He was a man, but he wore blouses and, dressed in a feminine way, played with those gender lines, but in a lot of ways was very masculine, like exuded this macho sexual energy. A lot of musicians actually play with gender roles, and by doing so, they actually kind of are able to reshape masculinity. I'm sure in 20 years, it's going to be no big deal to see, people who traditionally present in a masculine way to be wearing dresses. I think these things just change over time. So it's silly to say, oh, we're destroying masculinity. Maybe we are, but we're also changing it just like we've always done,
Yeah, it's not so much degrading it, but rather it's just expanding it. This new realm of non-binary attitudes and a way of living your life. I feel like it's just it's a way to augment those ideas of masculinity and femininity as opposed to just degrading them.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, instead of these two gigantic categories, these categories are now a little bit smaller, and then there's a third category where everything else goes. When I was growing up, there was this catchphrase, real men wear pink. And it had to do with this idea that if you are so secure in your masculinity, you can present in certain feminine ways. You can subvert expectations of your gender expression. And in fact, that is a very masculine thing to do. And similarly, we see things about, it's very manly to admit when you're wrong or to show emotions, kind of reclaiming these negative stereotypes that maybe shouldn't be negative stereotypes. I think our definitions of masculine and feminine are going to continue to change just as they always have.
To add to that point, the whole idea of pink being a feminine color and something like blue being a masculine color, I'm pretty sure a century ago was flip-flopped.
It's totally arbitrary. It's totally...
The idea that a color would be associating that with this idea of gender just seems... everything's just been prescribed by hundreds of years of social change. What we're seeing in a way that maybe we haven't seen before, at least in Western civilization, is an acknowledgement that these ideas are arbitrary, an acknowledgement that not everything is one or the other, and this is not new to everyone. A lot of cultures have ideas of a third gender.
A lot of Asian cultures have a third gender. A lot of Native American tribes have a third gender called two-spirit. I don't know a ton about that, so if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But that's, generally speaking, different cultures have different ideas of gender. And it is very silly to say, well, this culture's right because this is the one where I grew up.
I also think a lot of the people who will fight against these new norms, a lot of them are maybe a little bit more conservative. Maybe they strongly identify as being very patriotic. And literally one of the things that was supposedly important to the foundation of this country was that idea of like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And this feels very much so just within that framework.
Yeah.
Like it's just people living their life and pursuing happiness. You feel happy now, revoking that whole he him idea and just going by they them, and that's to me that's the American dream if there ever was one. I know it's maybe silly to bring it back to that, but again, like if you I
agree. I think this idea that all people are created equal, it's silly to say just because your gender doesn't fit neatly into the boxes that I was taught when I was a toddler.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for watching. This has been a delightful time as always. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Patreon. Do everything. And thank you.
And SoundCloud.
And
check out our SoundCloud.
SoundCloud.
We have a group.
Yes. So you can check out soundcloud.com/JDellMusic for his solo work.
Yes, yeah.
SoundCloud.com/FutureFarmers for our together work. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.